So we've been looking at how traits affect the perception and emergence and effectiveness of leadership. And last week we looked at surface level traits, which are things that can be seen and noticed immediately, things like demographic characteristics, like a person's race or sex or age. And then this week we're looking at more deep level traits. These are more mental traits like personality and intelligence. So a few things I'd like to emphasize here is that these trait differences that we observe, they do have different effects. They have effects on whether a person is perceived as a leader and whether a person emerges as a leader. And this is a separate question than whether they will ultimately be effective as a leader. Do they exhibit positive leadership behaviors? And both of these, the surface level traits certainly have a connection to preconceived notions and perceptions of leadership, and so does personality. Personality also, to some degree, is related to leadership behaviors and the outcomes that we might consider effective leadership. I think it's important that we understand, though, that personality isn't the only thing that determines behavior. So when you take an assessment or you understand someone else's personality, we have to be careful to think that that's the sole driving force determining how a person behaves. There are other things, there are situational factors that determine how we behave. And there are other contextual factors, such as culture, that influence how we behave. And to understand leadership effectiveness and predict it, we really have to consider a number of factors, and we have to be careful about not being too simplistic. So as you go through the leadership experience assignment this week, you'll be doing a personality test. And one thing I encourage you to do is to look at the results of that and think about the situations you face or those situations you will face further along in your career, because that's going to influence also whether those traits are a benefit to you or a hindrance to you. Also, I'd like you to think about how you develop as a leader and how that's influenced by your traits. Some of the traits that you have may be very in tune and aligned with effective leadership behaviors. You might consider those your personality strengths when it comes to leadership. Other of the traits that you have might not be so aligned with effective leadership, and you might consider those leadership trait weaknesses. Now, oftentimes what we try and do is improve on our weaknesses, and there's some room for that, but I would like you to consider a different course of action, and that is to focus on your strengths and to try and enhance your strengths as much as you can. Perhaps we have more room to move, more room to grow in those things that are our strengths. So what about our weaknesses? Our weaknesses, I really think what we should be focusing is more so than on changing ourselves, but finding tools and aids and support systems that help us manage those weaknesses. Overall, what I want you to understand is that when you think about personality, think about it not in isolation, but in contexts and in situations. And if you want to respond in a developmental sense to understanding your personality better, perhaps it's better to grow your strengths and manage your weaknesses.